Welcome, everyone. I'm so pleased to be here. Life, and certainly work, can serve up its fair share of adverse situations that we have to contend with. And I think in your respective fields, when you consider some of the conditions that you are tasked to perform under, time pressures to do really complex procedural things, you're dealing with human suffering every single day. Certainly there are moments where life and death might hang in the balance in terms of your actions or inactions. That's a lot. This slide up here, I think, perfectly captures the dichotomy of adversity. These experiences have the power, if we can navigate through effectively, to create newfound strength, possibilities, perspectives, understandings. Our skills, our knowledge can improve. Conversely, of course, if we don't navigate through effectively, these experiences can destroy our passion, our confidence, our belief in ourselves, and certainly what's possible. Now, we've all heard the sayings, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? And we learn way more from failure than we ever do from success. People are smiling. A lot of that is true, but I will say this to you. I've worked with many people who have gone through adverse experiences and would not describe themselves in that way. It's not going through tough times in and of itself that leads to the value that adversity has to offer us. It's what we do with those experiences that matters the most. How we interpret them, how we ready for them, how we learn from them, and how we heal from them. That is what determines whether these experiences teach or torture. And I'll give you 3 good reasons why all of us, in whatever we do, should consider developing a framework, a personal framework, to be more effective at navigating through these very experiences. Number 1, they're coming. I don't care how smart you are. I don't care how experienced you are. I don't care how nice of a person you are, and nor does adversity. It's coming anyways. Number 2, it has tremendous teaching potential within it. There is so much growth that we can extract if we can view it in the right kind of way. And number 3, the third reason is because we are mostly scared shitless of the thought, right? Hey, this was great. Who wants to go out and make a whole bunch of mistakes next time you work, right? We don't even want to think about it. It's like we break out in a rash at the thought of it. And so by virtue of being that scared, that anxious, that panicked about even the thought of these experiences, we potentially put ourselves at greater risk to experience more of them. We might be too heightened to execute effectively in a moment when we're doing something procedural. We may not communicate as effective. We might obsess about things, and it takes away our focus, takes away our energy. So there's a lot of good reasons why we should establish a personal framework to help us navigate through. And I'll share a few ideas with you in that regard. First, a story. I was working with doing a workshop for a physician group a few years ago, and we were talking about adversity and the challenges and this sort of thing. And there was a gentleman in the back who stood up, and he shared his story. He's a surgeon, and he was very successful in his career. He never had anywhere near what you might consider a critical event or bad outcome. And it became a badge of honor that he wore proudly. He became that guy, right? And the more that he identified with that, the more he doubled down his efforts to try and be perfect, to try and avoid failure, and he was very successful in his career, that is. But it destroyed his life. His wife left him. He was estranged from his kids. His mental health took a nosedive. His physical health, by extension, took a nosedive. He became so obsessed with panic attacks and fear of failure that he had to leave the field. He's no longer doing it. Before he was 50 years old, this person who was obviously incredibly talented at what he did was no longer doing it. And he stood across the crowd that day with tears in his eyes, and he said, I wish I would have failed. It would have forced me to find resources, to find supports, to develop a framework like I'm talking about. And this person who was so talented would still be delivering his important work. There's an article written by Malcolm Gladwell in 1999 called The Physical Genius. It's a fascinating piece. he interviewed incredible performers from around the world in all kinds of fields. Elite athletes, elite musicians, fantastic physicians and other medical professionals. And he was curious. He said, okay, skill aside, is there anything about their mental makeup, that we can extract and maybe teach to others that makes them so good? And he kind of hypothesized that, I assume that they probably just think of success all the time. They dismiss any thought of the possibility of failure or any of that stuff, and they're always focused on the positive. He couldn't have been more wrong. In fact, what he found was each of these incredible performers in their respective fields were driven by a practical-minded obsession with the possibilities and consequences of failure. And the key phrase there that changes everything is practical-minded. They recognized, by virtue of being human, imperfect human beings, if they didn't take care of themselves, scan themselves and their environment to figure out blind spots and be ready for things and do the small stuff to prepare, it was going to happen to them. And secondly, they appreciated that there's nothing I can do even in that regard to completely avoid the consequences of ultimate failure. It's going to happen. And so they would prepare themselves in that way. And so can we. This gentleman right here is Vic Fangio. He is the head coach, the newly minted head coach of my favorite sports team, the Denver Broncos Football Club. Been a fan for over 35 years. At his introductory press conference, he was essentially asked, so coach, give us some reason to believe that, things are going to be better with you at the helm. What can you do to give us some sense of confidence? And he says, well, I can tell you this. This team will not lose by a virtue of death by inches. And he expanded on that. He says, this team will do the small things, the attention to detail, the professionalism to show up here every single day, ready to perform, ready to learn, ready to do what we can do. Whatever's happening in your personal life, whatever, when you step through these doors, we are going to be the team that puts that aside and is focused on what we got to do. And it's such a powerful concept. And if you think about what does that mean in your professional world? Can I ask a question? Does anybody here engage in any type of pre-shift routine in their job? A lot of people. That's great. If you were to go to the gym right after this and do an intensive weight training circuit, would you just step straight to the bench press bar and throw your max weight on and start cranking out the reps? No. You'd warm up your body first, right? Same analogy if you went for a run. You're going to get your body and your mind prepared for the conditions of stress you're about to put it under. How many times do we find ourselves in our job battling traffic, trying to get that coffee, sprinting to get to the paramedic shop or to the emergency room or whatever it is, and that's how we're starting our day. That's not a pro. Take 15 minutes. Grab a coffee. Find some personal space. Get your mind switched on. Watch a rebellion video, right? To get your mind thinking paramedic, nursing, emergency medicine, whatever it is. That's step one we can do to minimize the possibilities of adversity and failure. The best performers I've been around are very conscious, which is to say they take time to step back and go, okay, what are the things that I need to be ready for? That if I'm not, could hijack my attention, could take me away from feeling and performing how I need to. And then they use this sim center up here, and they engage a little rehearsal process, a little imagery, and they surface some of the feelings and thoughts they might have in tricky situations. They get a sense of what that might be, the arousal, whatever's getting in the way of them being able to be here now. And then they rehearse seeing and feeling themselves respond to those situations more effectively, bringing the arousal down, finding the solution, finding some peace to be more present. That's when we can be more conscious. Another strategy that people utilize that I'm aware of to get ready for things in advance, to stave off potential failure and error, you can run a pre-mortem. This is a popular concept in business now. You sit down and you discuss something that might be ahead of you as if to say it went horribly wrong, like a massive failure. And then we ask and work backwards and go, why did this happen? And what's amazing is you start to surface potential blind spots. Well, if a new team, I'm not as familiar with this group, maybe the communication could have been an issue, right? Maybe I was still stressed out a little bit from the last case, the last procedure, whatever it was. And we start to figure these things out. And if we figure them out and surface them, guess what? We can be better prepared to stave them off. And the best part of this exercise is the failure didn't happen. This is going to help protect you against it. You got to figure out how you want to show up to your shift. I didn't coin this little thing here, but I certainly like this as a model. The difference between a thermostat and a thermometer. A thermometer reacts to the conditions. A thermostat sets the internal conditions. These little things that you can do before your shift, before a tough case, to get yourself ready helps ensure that my internal thermostat is going to be the thing that I want to bring to this moment. I don't want to be sitting there reacting, fearful, what's happening next. I'm going to get ready. Of course, none of this can prevent certain instances where we're going to feel and experience failure, setbacks, mistakes. Adversity, as I said, it's coming. So what do we do then? This gentleman here, Dr. Kurt Tribble, good friend of mine, he is a cardiothoracic surgeon from Virginia. I've had many conversations about this idea with him. And in essence, the process goes something like this. If adversity comes, if we have a bad outcome, if we make a mistake, first is going to be an emotional sensation, right? Fear, anger, frustration, shame, embarrassment, all of the above at one time, perhaps. You cannot shortchange yourself of that. It's like there's a micro-grieving process that's happening here. So we allow ourselves the feelings that we're feeling, because to deny them would be to push them underground, and then they're going to manifest in other ways. Allow the emotional experience. Don't judge it. Be patient with it. There's no timeline as to when you're supposed to be done with it. If we honor the emotional experience, we're in a better position to do the intellectual work. We have an ethical obligation to draw the lessons, to process, to apply, to be better under the same conditions next time. And then the next phase is to share your experience with as many people as you can, such that perhaps they may learn from it and maybe protect them from going through something like that, but also that they come to understand that we can share these things and that it's healthy to do so. And if we do all of these things, we certainly should allow ourselves the chance to forgive ourselves. That doesn't mean forget. You're never going to forget these experiences, especially if they're quite critical. But if we don't allow forgiveness, that in and of itself can impair us going forward. Again, maybe we're a bit reluctant or hesitant, or we start to obsess or worry more. When you allow forgiveness, something else happens too. You will be even more diligent and focused in your preparation, because no one wants to go through that again. And when you allow forgiveness, you allow yourself as well to seek out help, and you become a beacon for others who need the same. There's another thing we can do to help both prepare for and bear hard and challenging situations, and that is to voluntarily seek out hard and challenging situations. These two people here might seem like an odd couple, and when I describe them, it might seem even more. The person on the left, the big Jack guy, this is Andy Frisella. He is an entrepreneur, podcaster, fast car driving, tattoo kind of guy. He's incredible, his stuff. The person beside him, Dr. Nicole LaPera, is a psychologist from New York. I think she's in Philadelphia now, actually. And she is an expert on mindfulness and healing from trauma and past pain. And both of them share a very similar philosophy around what we're talking about here. And that is, it kind of dovetails into some of the research from trauma. There's primarily 3 ways that we can recover from trauma. Number 1, talk therapy. Number 2, medications. Number 3, to have positive mind and body experiences with struggle and strain and stress and come out of it unscathed. Their message is to do hard things, whether it's breath work, meditation, yoga, CrossFit, crossword for that matter. Doesn't matter. Expose yourself willingly to things that are challenging, that are going to trigger some of the thoughts and feelings that are associated with struggle and associated with our fear of failure. And when we do that, we get stronger and we start to reverse our conception of what these experiences are like. And lo and behold, we start to seek them out. Andy Frisella has this thing that's gone viral. He calls it his 75 Hard program. Basically, you have to do 5 things every single day for 75 days. The 5 things are not earth-shattering or especially difficult, but the consistency is, the getting in the habits, the establishing the routine, the discipline. That's the hard part. You got to do 2 workouts a day. One has to be outside. You can go for a walk with your dog. There's no parameters on what the workout has to be. It's not like Navy SEAL training or anything like that. He has no cheat meals as part of his thing. You got to drink a gallon of water, and you got to read 10 pages from a book. Any of us could do that. It's not the things that are hard, but it's when you're on day 17 and it's 9 o'clock at night, and you realize, damn it, I still got a half a liter of water to drink. You know? I got to wake up at 11 in a cold sweat because I didn't read my 10 damn pages, right? It's the habits, the discipline. We are now in control. We're showing ourselves. When that internal voice of resistance comes up, it's too hard, it's too this, I don't want it. We step through, we push through, and we're retraining our brain to value struggle, to value setbacks, and to show ourselves that we are stronger than our circumstances. It's amazing what can happen when you start to do this more regularly. There's a fantastic book by Nassim Nicholas Taleb called Antifragile. When you talk about adversity, oftentimes the concept of resilience comes up. Resilience, the ability to withstand shock and bounce back. And it's a very important concept, but to me it's insufficient. When I just spent 10 minutes talking about the value of adversity and the growth potential that exists within it, I don't want to bounce back to form. I want to expand and be better. So if I could at least start to view these circumstances as something that is related to antifragile, meaning that in spite of how difficult it might feel right now, I know there's something meaningful that's going to come from this. I know I'll be better by this or from this in certain ways. Systems that are anti-fragile require stress and difficulty and failure to grow. The human body is anti-fragile. How do we get bigger muscles? Sitting on the couch watching Netflix? No, you got to go out there and work hard, break that tissue down, damage it so that it adapts and repairs itself. Immune system is the same way, bones are the same way. The human mind and the human spirit is the same way also. We're meant to grow from struggles and setbacks and adversity. And if we can approach them in such a way, wow, what potential we unlock. Okay, good. I was going to ask, any Game of Thrones fans here? Okay. Can someone finish this sentence for me? In the iconic episode here, the Battle of Winterfell, when the witch asked Arya Stark, "What do we say to the god of death?" Not today. Here she was, scared, helpless, paralyzed by fear. And she took a deep breath, and she summoned the courage to act. These situations are always going to frighten us. But if we can find reason enough to step in anyways and to demonstrate that courage to ourselves, we'll be better for it. And how does that relate to your professional world? In much the same way. If we can allow ourselves to think on these things that scare the shit out of us, to begin to project some sense of how we will go on, who can help, what's the things I have to be aware of as they're unfolding, my thoughts are going here, my emotions are going there. And we take that deep breath and we do some rehearsal and we ready ourselves. We too can demonstrate this type of courage. Create and destroy. I hope that you can utilize some of these ideas that I've shared going forward to create a new narrative, a new framework, a new mindset to deal with the inevitable setbacks, failures, errors that as human beings are coming our way. And if we can do that in the process, we will destroy many of the fears and limiting beliefs and doubts that we have about our ability to do so. Thank you.